Good afternoon. This is Real Talk for Real Life with your host, Aprell Michelle. It is April 28th, 2020, and I'm here with my good friend, Chef Paul Austin, and we're going to be talking about some things that are happening now. We have a pandemic going on here with the COVID-19 coronavirus, and we just want to talk about some real feelings, things, how it has been affecting us as personally and collectively. We just want to get in real deep about how it has affected him personally and how it may have affected his family overall. So the first, I just want to say thank you for being here today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Oh, great. So this pandemic has come up real quickly. I mean, I know that they knew about it since last year, but they didn't start acting on it until sometime in February, March. And they were actually behind the eight ball. What do you think about that? How do you think that the government, in a sense, has handled this pandemic?
They dropped the ball. Because, if you know about something like this from November, you would expect that the government would take action from then, even though it might not be here in the U.S. You know that something is on the way. Make sure you're prepared and ready, so in the event that it does hit your shores, you have some kind of plan in place to contain it. During the last administration, Obama's administration, you had SARS, Ebola, West Nile, the N1 virus, and all those were contained. I mean, there were a few deaths and a few outbreaks,
Right.
but it was mostly contained.
Right.
With this administration, if you've been watching the news, the task force that was responsible for containing this pandemic, that was disbanded.
Right.
But on top of that, we heard that whatever supply we had of PPDs and other essentials were given away to China. So by the time it hit New York, especially, the U.S., but New York especially,
Right.
nobody was prepared. And so
Right.
everybody was scrambling, running around trying to contain this. Right. And by then, many, many people gotten sick. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, many people died as a result of it.
Right. So because of that, you said that they dropped the ball, and it's clear. But a lot of people. So we're not going to sit here and do the blame game, because the thing is, people are dying. People have been sick. And speaking of that, I know that you had been sick at one point.
Yes.
And I know that you're a vet, so you
Yes.
went to the hospital.
Yes. And
they told you that you had a.
Yes, I went to the VA about maybe a week or two before
Mm-hmm.
the outbreak truly happened,
Mm-hmm.
and for some reason it was just eerily quiet in the I went to the ER, and usually there are people there, but it was just like nobody there.
Right. And
so I went in, they checked me out, they said I had a bronchial infection.
Right.
So they gave me amoxicillin,
Mm-hmm.
and told me to go home and just basically try to recover.
Right.
I had a bad reaction to the amoxicillin, so after 2 days I stopped taking it.
What was the reaction?
Started feeling like really severe headaches.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know that's part of the symptoms of COVID, but that seemed to have brought it on quicker.
Right.
But however, you and I having a discusussion, you feel that it did help with the actual infection in my lung.
Itself, right.
So about a week and a half later, I went back to the VA because I was just feeling terrible.
Right, but by this time,
I had headache, couldn't eat, was nauseous.
Right.
Had a high fever.
And you were dizzy.
I was dizzy. And then there was just this taste in my mouth. It had like a burnt kind of taste. So went to the VA in Manhattan, and I remember walking into the VA, and I was wondering if I would make it out.
Well, by this time, the VA had, because you were told that the VA that was in Brooklyn was not a COVID.
Was a COVID hospital. But the VA in Manhattan was not COVID. So once I arrived there, I asked, and they said, no, we're taking COVID patients.
Right.
And they were actually taking people from Elmhurst Hospital, which was one of the hardest hit hospitals. Mm-hmm. So they were taking people from Elmhurst. But Going in there, I happened to be in the emergency room. Got checked out. They said, we think you've had it.
Right.
So just take Tylenol, go home, drink plenty of fluids, drink a lot of, drink hot drink, stay hydrated, and just get a lot of rest.
Right.
So for the next 2.5 weeks, I've been home. Actually, 3 weeks, been home, recovering from that.
And what the blessing was is that your breathing did not labor; it was still consistent. You were, even though you had the cold, you didn't feel like you were short of breath.
But I didn't have shortness of breath, so I was coughing up phlegm.
And which was good that you spit it out. Right.
And generally, when you have a cold or the flu, and you're coughing up phlegm, is usually green or
Yellowish
yellowish color. But this was clear; it was a thick, clear phlegm coming up.
Right.
And knowing that a lot of people have experienced, there's an unfortunate, a lot of people have died because this phlegm will come, build up in the lungs.
Right.
And depending on the health status, there was some people had pre-existing conditions, so it didn't help. We had people who smoked or drank, and it didn't help.
Right.
And unfortunately, you had some people who were healthy, and for whatever reason, this happened to them, and they ended up passing away. So it's been a very trying and terrible time for a lot of people.
Right.
And you feel for them because they've lost families, loved ones. A lot of people pass away without anybody there because they had to quarantine people because of this epidemic and how contagious
that's
it
the
is.
sad part, where if you are a COVID patient, your loved ones can't go and see you, check on you, find out what your conditions are. And it makes it very difficult for the people outside. And then if something complicated happens without them knowing, you may pass away in the midst of all of it.
Right.
They're not there, and it feels like you're just in a desolate place. The person and the family has no closure, and it's a problem. I mean, I understand them trying to contain it, but it just leaves you. It almost feels like 9/11 in some way. You remember how when the towers fell and
the people up in the towers,
and the only thing that they could do was jump out the window, and then at the end of the day, those families who needed to bury their loved ones really couldn't. All they had was that ground, because a lot of them were disintegrated.
Right.
And I can understand the, this disconnect. Feeling like, hey, I never got a chance to say goodbye properly to my loved one. And that's the sad thing that bothers me. But I'm so grateful that you're still in the land of the living.
Well, I'm grateful to God. I'm grateful to Jesus Christ that I am here.
Amen.
Because there was a time, or rather there was a point where I didn't think I was going to make it.
Right.
And it's through prayer, reading the Word, and trusting God that I am still here.
Amen.
So I thank God for that.
And following instructions, because that is one of the things that people weren't doing. I think even with them being sick, they were still going out and doing certain things. And sometimes that's because they may not have anybody that's checking on them, or they are so independent that they say, well, I can do it. I've done it when I was sick before. This is nothing but a regular cold, but not knowing the dynamics and the extent of it. And I think that you just have to take cues from what has already transpired. The people are dropping from this, whether you're young or old, because when they first started, they said it was on for the older ones, those who were over 60 years old. And then they were talking about pre-existing conditions. And then when a 5-year-old died from it with no pre-existing conditions, they realized that
this is really serious.
It's not just for the old; it's for young, old,
black, white,
doesn't matter.
Rich, poor, it doesn't matter. And this thing again has devastated not only New York or the country, but the entire world. Because you look at Israel, Italy, and so many people died in Italy. So many people died in China. And at the end of the day, regardless of what you think politically, regardless of what you thought, who did what, who's right, who's wrong, people have died from this.
Absolutely. And I think that that's the insensitive thing that we hear through our political leaders, because there is no empathy. It's all about I feel sometimes it's all about the bottom line, or just trying to figure out how can we open up the economy, because people are losing. We're spending out money. We're not making anything, and people are trying to fit. It's like we're in a war. We're in an invisible war. We're fighting a virus that we cannot see. And if we were in front of it instead of behind it, we would have a better chance.
We have a much better chance. It wouldn't have gotten to the point where it's gotten to now. And then also you have to think about those who are on the front line.
Absolutely.
The doctors, especially the doctors
and nurses. Oh my goodness.
Who are seeing this day after day.
Yes.
Who are seeing people die just left and right. One person dies, another one starts to code, and then in the middle of that, somebody else is coding, and the toll that it's taking on this frontline workers. And unfortunately, a doctor yesterday committed suicide.
Yeah. Wow.
Because of all the death and and devastation that has taken place, and people, and I have friends and I have family who work on the front lines, and they've told me that you have like no time to really process, because you're just going, and then when you do finally get off and you have that moment, a lot of people just break down because of just the catastrophic nature of what's going on.
Because it's like a war. It really is. And this is how you can understand. And I know that you were a vet, but I know that you didn't. There was no comment time. Right, but you can understand those who were in the Army or Marines or whatever, and they've been on the front line in that aspect. How when they come back home, they suffer from
PTSD.
Right, and so these things are true because it's traumatic for those who are dealing with death all the time. So those who are on the front line with guns in the war, it's just no different than those who are in the hospital who are dealing with their stethoscope and the medications that they are having and all that, ventilators. So they're trying to keep and sustain life, and people are dying left and right. You finish with one, someone else is coding, and so they're trying to keep abreast of it, and it's hard for them. And it's so important for us as Christians to continue to pray for them and to keep them in the forefronts of our minds, and before on the throne, and
even once this thing kind of subsides, to minister to them, because now, just like in physical combat and war, a lot of these frontline people, they're gonna suffer from a form of PTSD. Once everything comes down, kind of calms down, a lot of people that have to live with this for the rest of their life, and how are they going to cope? And as Christians, as ministers of the gospel, we have to be able to be in position to minister to them. Now, some of us might not be there been there with them on the front line, but we could certainly relate with situations and things in our life, and bringing forth the word and ministering to them and even praying with them is one of the things we absolutely need to do. And I said, be prepared
to minister, to go forth. Absolutely. I think now we both go to the same ministry, and of course we're praying for our pastor, first lady, all the time, and but we've also had a loss as a congregation. We lost one of our members. And it's her name is Sandra Payne Mason. Yes. Beautiful woman, and she was a producer. She loved the Lord. She loved our pastor and first lady, and she also loved electronic
doing the audio visual. She actually had a show, Amanda's Corner, with
on Brick,
which is a local public access station here in Brooklyn, New York, and she loved what she did, and I actually had worked with her on a few occasions. Reactions sometimes clash. But it was but she was so dedicated to her and passionate about her work. To lose somebody like that with that type of passion, with that kind of love, it really hit us hard. It
was very shocking. Yes. And she was very knowledgeable about some stuff. I remember we did the Black History, and she was giving us some information about a little bit about Black history. And
that was maybe a month and a half, 1 month or two ago.
Yes. Yeah, it was towards the end of February. And just before all this happened, the shutting down.
Yes.
So it's been really tough.
Right.
As a congregation, and I know her husband and her family is feeling the loss, and it's hard because they couldn't really give her the proper send-off that they wanted to, because they have a really large family, and they had to go to I'm not sure if it was a funeral home or a church, but it was you only allowed 10 people, and it's very hard for those people who, she came from huge family, and you had to do a select amount of people, husband, children, maybe the grandchildren, but very limited, and that also includes the person who's doing the facilitating, maybe possibly the musician, and maybe pallbearers, and those who are part of the funeral home. So it's a very devastating thing. We will always miss her and love her, and we pray that we will get to see her again in the rapture.
Absolutely.
But, back to this COVID-19, we've had a number of things being said in the media, especially, reopening. What is your take on Georgia reopening some of their facilities? I understand that it's been hitting a lot of small businesses, because if you're self-employed, you can't look to unemployment to give you finances, because they look at you as saying that you're supposed to be paying into it. So if you're not paying into it, you can't get something out of it. So what do you think on this whole, them reopening their businesses?
At the end of the day, in my opinion, what's the most important thing? To use it, money? Is it people's lives? And then.
Well, I think they intertwine, because the money helps to sustain people's living habits.
True, but if you're opening things up, and people are still getting sick at a more rapid rate and dying at a more rapid rate, then that's not. That's
but I don't
not
think
work.
at the time that they're thinking that, because it's just like when this whole thing first happened, people were they were good guys of toilet tissue out. Running out of toilet tissue. People were running to the stores getting all the toilet tissue that they could get, and nobody could understand why. But someone made a big statement about that and said it's not about the toilet tissue. It's about the essential things that you feel that you need. It's like food, water, clothing, and toilet tissues. Even those are the things that you feel that you need to have in the house. So other things you may not think of as important, like a light bulb, which I had to go and purchase some light bulbs just in case anything happened. I would have enough light bulbs, not a lot, but enough if something blew out, because the other stores, like the 99-cent store or Home Goods, they're not really open to the public because they're not essential places. But Target and BJ's and Costco's and all these other stores, because they have foods and some clothing and maybe some electronics, they're more essential because they're dealing with things that people really, really need. So when the toilet tissue situation happened, it was made a joke out of. But you have to understand what is important to you. If you feel that toilet tissue or paper towels are important, those are the things that you're going to stock up on. So again, I know that Atlanta, Georgia, they opened up some of their salons and hair salons, and there was a big rush. What is your take on that? Them doing it.
You have to figure. You have to weigh. The economics versus people's lives. Now, again, we have to wait and see what's going to happen. Because if people start getting sick again...
Well, they did say something...
Right, well, I'm saying, if people start getting sick at a rapid rate now, then, that was a bad idea.
Right.
Now, the experts are saying that you should have a steady decline for about 2 weeks with hospital visitations, discharges, deaths, so on and so forth.
Right.
And if that's on the decline for 2 weeks, then you should start to gradually open things back up. Right. But a lot of this is being fueled politically. Right. And I think that's a terrible thing. Without getting too political, it's terrible.
Well, that this is a this is the year for the new presidency to go in for 2021. So there is a rush to get people back out there, get the economy back running. Because if this falls into place like President Trump wanted to, it's possible that he may get reelected because he, like so many others in history, have come in at the final moment, like saving, like being the savior of all things, like what's his name, Giuliani, who I thought was, not for me, was not the greatest mayor, but he did spark some anger through the black community in the beginning. Then when 9/11, I mean, there were so many different things that happened. These are not things that we don't know about. He's done things that he shouldn't have done, especially with Clinton and all these other politics or policies. And when he came, when 9/11 hit, he became the hero at the end, and it was like everything that he did prior to was kind of washed away. He became the city's mayor, the United States mayor. It was like, wow, I mean, really? So he had to be there because that's his job. But you didn't think of him, and you thought he was not that great until he did what he did. Mm-hmm. I mean, okay, but here you have also in the same, same token, you have President Trump, who is, as far as I'm concerned, he's not the greatest. Mm-hmm. I know people say he tries. I think he could try a lot better if he allowed people to talk with him instead of him instead of him having these conversations with himself. He needs to talk to his advisors. He's more or less thinking about how it can build and grow his voting rights. The things that was going to help him to get back into office for another 4 years. Mm-hmm. Which I think it'll be worse than it is now if people allow that to happen. So, what is your take on that?
To me, he's not a good leader. And again, I'm just speaking.
Right.
In fact, he's not a good leader. He doesn't inspire people. He doesn't bring people together. It's division. Mm-hmm. It's he has his own personal agenda.
Right.
And this situation that's happening to happen now is in an election. It's in an election season. So now he's doing everything he can to make himself look good.
Right.
So when November rolls around, people are going to vote for him.
Right.
And if you look at the facts, and you look how for example, when the doctors come up and speak, mm-hmm. they'll say what they need to say. Mm-hmm. He contradicts what they say. Right. Or then he talks like he's an expert instead of letting the experts talk and say what they need to say.
Right.
So, at the end of the day, what they I'm sorry.
It's okay.
At the end of the day, a lot of people suffered more than they had to.
Right.
People died that shouldn't have had to die.
Right.
If you had been on top of this from Jump Street, if you put your ego in check and left it at the door and made it about... No, truthfully, made it about the country.
Right.
Because as president, your job is to defend this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Right.
And this disease is this disease is an enemy.
Right, it is.
And your job is to defend us, and to protect us, and to keep us from this. And you did not do your job. You can't blame the last administration.
Right.
This is on your watch.
But unfortunately, this is a personality trait. He will never ever take responsibilities for his actions. Just like in the past, before the coronavirus, he blamed Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands for being a certain way, and he didn't even realize that they were a part of the United States. And the one thing that really was insulting to me during that period, when they had this terrible storm, he throws bounty paper towels to them, like basically soak up the water with the Bounty tissues. And and, you know, if it was me, I mean, and I'm like one of those people like you trying to egg me on. I'm a egg you on. I'd have threw him right back at him because I think it's insulting. You treat me like I'm so much garbage. And thank God for those who stepped up and helped the people who were in need. It should have came from us as a country, but we didn't. We didn't do it. There were people privately who gave their money, their time. They even went over there and volunteered. If they're still doing that, because they're still in turmoil.
Well, you know, I'm gonna tell you, you know, in spite of all that's going on, if you look at what's going on, you know, you look at the news. There are many people in this country who have been stepping up and helping out from people to help maybe making masks.
Oh yes,
making
beautiful.
protective
Yes.
equipment. You know, feeding people, clothing people,
Yes.
sheltering people.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people have come together. Thank God through this pandemic.
Yes.
To come together as a nation.
Right.
And
despite
and it didn't matter if you were famous, if you were not, if you were
black,
homeless,
white.
if you were black, white. It didn't matter.
Right.
Because you've had famous people from this pass away.
That's
and
right.
You know, with everything shut down, there's no sports. There's no, you know, they've stopped taping on TV shows, and so when you see people now online, everybody's just plain Jane.
Right.
It's not about how you look. It's not about all your money. It's not about all that
Right.
stuff. But it's simply about people coming together and helping one another. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And it shows that the heart of people, that they're still good.
I think what has come out of this great, very disturbing time, but something good, is that people are getting on their knees more. They're talking to the Lord more. They are people are becoming more innovative and more you know, how would you say, they are inventing things. They're doing things that they never done before. They're also talking a lot more because people were using their phones. They're engaging
and communicating a lot more. It's funny. I went to a video electronic store here in Brooklyn just yesterday, and they were telling me there's a worldwide shortage on webcams, which I didn't know. So, because that's what they usually have webcams out the wazoo, and they had none. So people are, you know, going online, you know, on their computers, updating, you know, what's it, their cameras or their audio, whatever, coming together online. But I want to mention one thing, if I can.
Yes, you may.
As far as ministry, that the church has been put in a position now where, you know, you don't have your buildings, you don't have all your fancy robes and staffs and fancy shirts and your fish hats and all this ceremony. But now you're in a position where all that's out the window, and you have to worship. You know, you have to worship God truly in spirit and in truth. You know, because past we've made it about being in the building. And, you know, it was such a grand building, and everything we did was in the building. And we were confined to these four walls. Now, you can't be confined now. You know, you can't even be in your church now. You know, now some, they might have one person stand and minister. But we have to come together via either conference call or Zoom or some type of social media, and it forces us now to minister outside the box, because you're not confined anymore.
I think that that's a great thing, honestly, because we're actually now truly doing what God has told us to do in Acts 1 when he said to go out into all the world
and preach the gospel.
And so, because a lot of times people do a 10% outreach and 90% in-house stuff. And I'm not even talking about in-reach as far as like
even
family.
to your own congregation.
We don't even do that.
You just go to
we're doing this conferences, conventions, and I'm not saying that these things are bad, but I think that they have been in the front line more than they should have been behind.
Well, yeah, that should be secondary.
They're more like revivals. They should be like more revivals, like a time when, like when they in the Bible when they talk about they used to have home ministry, and then they would come together as a congregation to the temple or to the synagogue, and that was like, I don't know how often.
Well, I'm sorry, and it's like, our job is to go and win souls. Period. It's to go and win souls for the kingdom.
Well, our job seriously is not just winning souls. What it is planting and watering. We continue to forget about this formula: the planting, watering, and increase. Planting and water. We have to put information out there to the people. Some people may not want to know. We got to follow the formula that Jesus did when he did a 3-year tour. He did his 3-year tour, and once he finished his tour, he began to prepare himself for his exit.
Right.
So, and preparation was important because he knew he was coming back.
Right.
But the thing is, we don't take what he did, and we don't
apply that formula.
We're so caught up in the being in front of the congregation. And I'm not saying that this is wrong. I'm just saying we're just so engulfed in that.
But the word does say that we are in a latency period, so men are going to be, it's more about me, myself, and I, as opposed to doing what the Lord has commanded us to do.
Right.
And thank God, right before, because the Lord has come back for a church without spot or wrinkle.
Right.
But now you see like this revival. It's a revival.
It is.
It is a revival.
It is.
And you're going to not only have a revival within the church, but now because of this pandemic, people are becoming to Christ, because now
Absolutely.
people are people are broken. They're devastated. They have no clue how to cope with this.
Right.
And there's a perfect opportunity to go out into the world to these people and minister to them and let them know that you have a Savior, which is Jesus Christ. You have the one that whatever you're going through, he can heal you. He can deliver you. He can set you free from all of this stuff that you've been dealing with.
Right.
But it's us getting out there and ministering to people.
Right.
And not just, sitting at home or just sitting in a building.
Right. This is opportunity. Opportunities it's come, and it's time for us to step it up. I've seen so many different things happen online, and I'm amazed. I'm actually elated by some of the things that I've seen online, even through our ministry, how we are coping and dealing, and our pastor is phenomenal.
Dr. Harsi Michael, he is a phenomenal, and when we see him preach on Sunday morning, he's sitting, we're sitting at home, and he's ministering, and so he got to get up and I got to get up and praise God.
Yes, because the worship is not confined. What it is that, and I think what has happened is people did make it about being in the building.
Right.
And see, worship is wherever you are.
Right.
I can worship God wherever I go. I take him wherever I am. And I think it doesn't stop because I'm not in the four walls of the church. Right. That building will be here after we leave, raptured up. Right. So what are you going to do then?
And then, unfortunately, we've had a lot of bishops, apostles, and
yes. Let's just pray for our sisters and brothers
prominent people in the ministry who have gone on to be with the Lord. Yes. And now we have those positions need to be, we still have to rather carry on those ministries. We still have to carry on the work.
Exactly.
And you got to be ready. We have to be ready as a church, as a body, more than ever.
Yeah.
Because people are going to need ministering. They need ministering now, and it's in our faces now.
Yeah, it's
true. And we need to get out there and do it now.
Yes. Well, I'm so grateful that we've had this time. We have another segment coming up, and we will talk about that in the next segment about our president and his disinfectants.
Oh, do we have to talk about that?
Yes, we do.
Okay, we'll discuss that.
But for right now, we're just going to say thank you once again for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And this again, my name is Aprell Michelle, and you've been here with Real Talk for Real Life in 2020. Peace.